When John Patrick Shanley's play Doubt arrived on Broadway in 2005, Ben Brantley of the New York Times called it inspired and extraordinary. Doubt won both the Tony Award and Pulitzer Prize that year. Joining me now is John Patrick Shanley. He has taken on the challenge of turning his play into a film. Also joining me, it's stars Meryl Streep, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Amy Adams, and Viola Davis. Here is the trailer for Doubt.
I want you all to be alert. I am concerned about matters in St. Nicholas School.
Academically?
I was not inviting a guessing game, Sister Raymond. What's this, Mr. Conroy?
I don't know, sister. They're all uniformly terrified of you.
How it works. Boy! Come up here.
Dragon is hungry.
1, 2, 3.
It's a new time, sister. The church needs to change.
The point being?
We should be friendlier.
Father Flynn, he called Donald Miller to the rectory.
So, it's happened. We are going to have to stop him. Ourselves. What happened in the rectory?
Happened? Nothing happened. I had a talk with the boy.
What about?
Private matter.
He's 12 years old. What could be private?
You haven't the slightest proof of anything.
But I have my certainty.
I can fight you.
You will lose.
Why you gotta know something like that for sure when you don't? You come to your school, kids don't like him. One man is good to him, this priest.
It is unsettling to look at people with suspicion. I feel less close to God.
When you take a step to address wrongdoing, you are taking a step away from God. In his service.
You are single-handedly holding this parish back.
What are you doing in this school?
People will go after your humanity. To tell you that the light in your heart is a weakness, don't believe it.
You just don't like him. You are letting that convince you of something terrible.
Look at that. You blew out my light.
What did you hear? What did you see that convinced you so thoroughly?
I don't think Father Flynn did anything wrong.
You just want things to be resolved so you can have simplicity back.
Doubt can be a bond as powerful as certainty.
I'll throw your son out of this school.
You hurt my son to get your way.
You have no right to act on your own. You have no right.
I will do what needs to be done. You should understand that, or you will mistake me.
I am pleased to have all of them here. Let me begin with reading from the author's op-ed in the Baltimore Globe. Doubt is not paralysis, certainly certainty is. Doubt keeps the doors open and windows open. Belief in one room with no way out. Do not let others impose a polarity of response on you. You need not live a reactive life. Don't look to have life explained to you, presented to you. Live the life that emanates from your interior greatness. Be an overwhelming bounty of impressions, ideas, conflicting theories, and let the propellant behind all this be generosity, a giving. So that's what this movie's about.
I darn well agree with that statement.
Since you wrote it.
There you go.
Oh, that was good.
That was good, wasn't it? Yeah. So talk about the creation of this play in the first time and then the transition to film.
I wrote the play, and modern plays are written with very few characters, in part because of the economics of the theater. We've hypnotized ourselves into believing that's the best way to tell the story. But when I had the opportunity to turn it into a film, then I could show how the nuns live in their convent, the priests in their rectory. I could show the parishioners. I could show the kids in their classrooms, the kid that everybody's struggling over. And it was actually a very organic thing to open it up.
Yeah, and this was autobiographical to the degree of town and place and church.
Yes, it was autobiographical in the anthropological sense.
Yes.
So it was an Irish, an Italian working class neighborhood in the Bronx, a real world unto itself, and we shot it as a world unto itself.
And so how did you come to this idea? What spurred the notion of this duel between
Well, it was many.
these two?
Well, many tributaries, but certainly, one of the things was when I wrote the play, it was during the run-up to the Iraq War, and there was great certainty about the weapons of mass destruction, and I kept asking people what evidence they had for this, and they didn't seem to have any, but were still very invested in the idea, and I thought this is some kind of mini religion.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of this earlier time in my life in the Bronx, and when, again, people believed certain things, and it made them blind to certain things. And I wouldn't write a play about that in and of itself, but it was certainly a spur to writing a play.
And when it came time to make the movie,
Yes.
you insisted, you believed, Scott Rudin believed that you had to do it.
Yes, Scott Rudin came to me after I did Joe versus the Volcano 18 years ago and said, let's do a movie together. And I said, I just don't feel like it. 18 years later, he came to me again and said, I think Doubt should be a film and I think you should direct it. And I said, I think you're right.
There are people who think Frost Nixon is better as a film than it was as a play. Films can be better than plays because what?
Well, for that very reason that I said, when you take something that is so condensed, sometimes you're leaving vital information out, and it can be more natural to expand it into a film than the kind of dry little cube that you have to pour water on that explodes into a play. Both have tremendous value. But you can do things in a film that let you understand the world, the context in which a story takes place.
On a glance here and a visualization there can...
There's one particular two
Yes, I know.
scenes without dialogue that are up against about the way the priests live and the nuns live that causes one of the most explosive
So you
reactions.
said about casting this play, which had already been casted, and you want to use different actors this time to make the film. For all kinds of reasons, I assume. So what were we looking for in Mother Alicia's?
Well, as far as if I asked the guy who was selling me the newspaper in the morning who hardly spoke English who should play the part, he would say Meryl Streep. Everybody in New York that Meryl
You
should
got
play the
the
part.
newspaper man, got you the damn job.
I owe him 10%.
You didn't need William Morris, sorry. You need a newspaper guy in your life.
The real question was who was going to make Meryl sweat? Who was going to make her
Oh, my
work
God,
hard?
there he is.
That's when we got to Philip Seymour Hoffman. Because
Did you need, it is the notion you need... the notion of making her, yes. Oh, she's trembling. These are quotes from you. Look at it. You're shaking. So that was the beginning of the core quality you needed.
Yes.
Two people who could scare the hell out of each other.
formidable adversaries.
Formidable assets, because there is here a duel.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And, I began it with, the priest is giving his sermon, but then there's an enormous entrance that Sister Aloysius, the principal of the school, has, played by Meryl. And she comes down and very much establishes her presence as the authoritarian ruler of the school.
And that's one thing you could do in film. You literally could see her during the, which is a nice thing to do. But tell me who she is.
Well,
And where she comes from, and what is it at stake for her in this movie?
Well, I felt that she was a woman of limited opportunity in her life, a smart woman of ambition that had been broken at certain places in her life that I decided for myself, like the playwright didn't get to decide these things, but based on what John had given me, the argument and the risibility, her why she is so alert to this particular sin interested me. And so I imagined for her a backstory that included some real pain and knowledge. So I think that as a young woman, a young married woman, when her husband died, she went to a place that was welcoming for a person with ambition and intelligence. And there weren't a lot of places. I was trying to explain to my daughter what it was like in 1963 and 64, what the expectations were for girls. And the teaching profession was there, and the nursing profession, but there weren't lawyers, there weren't doctors, there were great teachers because, and a lot of them were women, because that was the profession open to them. But I think that her vocation was one of need. I think that's what brought her to the church. I'm talking too much about
No, you're not. Stop it.
I'm not going to talk about my character anymore. Where's the mystery?
And so, who does she come up against?
Oh God,
This is not easy for me. Is it?
it is. It's hard. It's a bit more difficult for me to talk about. I could talk about Father Flynn in the present, and I don't mean that just because of you don't want to give away the
In the present.
about
right.
this, but meaning that I filled those things in personally, but they're intertwined. His history's intertwined with his present, meaning I think he's a man who does want his place of vocation to be the center of the community. I think he wants people to be excited to come to where he works. I think he wants it to be the center of thought and debate. I think he genuinely thinks this. I genuinely wants this, and he's also part of that hierarchy, and he's at the top of it. And I do think that isn't very progressive. Do you know what I mean? So he comes right. See what I mean? He's a progressive guy coming right smack right up against something that's not that he's a part of, and that he's not quite willing to give up yet, as you can see in that scene when he comes in and sits in the chair. So there's all these great complexities that are happening. But the way I just said, I do think of him like that, and I do think it's also informed by harm, by hurt. By injury, you do know what I mean? Yeah. It's also informed by injury and what that injury is, but it's hard to talk about the story. Yeah.
But at least for 15 minutes.
No, but it's tricky because of the story. It's
all right, I'm trying to identify all the characters here. Your character, Sister
James.
Sister James.
She is.
What role does she play in this? What's her? We know the protagonist.
She's also sort of a spokesperson for the audience. Yeah. She's torn back and forth the whole time between two very powerful, convincing people, both who believe and are very certain in their belief system. And she's a little bit more vulnerable in that she's easily influenced and wants both people so desperately to like her, and to understand her. And so she's driven by the curiosity and the need to please, which is something that tears at her in this situation.
And Viola?
It is a great scene. I guess I'm the voice from the outside, the voice of the world, the world that's not black and white. I have to tell you, I see her as being kind of the same as Sister Aloysius, a woman of limited choices, a woman who is... and which feeds the desperation of the scene. She is a woman who is being the advocate for her son and is loving her son in extraordinary circumstances and is trying to appeal to this woman. And I have to tell you, from the very beginning, people kind of see Sister Aloysius as being almost demonic.
Yes.
And, seriously,
did you see her as demonic?
No, but some people do. When they read it on the page. I mean, she's. But for me, when I come into the scene, I see her as just another woman who is just like me, a woman of limited choices, and I'm trying to appeal to her to save the life of my son.
That is your concern, the son.
That's my only concern, and I don't live in a world that's black and white. I have to kind of live in a world of not seeing, of being in the gray area.
Mm-hmm. You don't want anybody to walk out of this movie without
ever.
Not just in the middle of the movie. Stay for the next performance. We'll create this new idea of how you see how these kids who go to the movies 11 times. We'll have an audience that just stays for 11 movies until they can work it out, until they can decide who's right in this movie. They'll stay there, and you will not get out of your chair until you know who was right and who was wrong.
No, hell no. That's not what I want them to walk out with their cynicism destroyed.
Tell me more.
Cynicism is a form of blindness and entrenchment and a kind of defensive belief system that convinces you that you don't have to do anything. And I think that the zeitgeist has exhausted itself and swung as far as it can in one direction, and that we are now at the cusp of great change in our society, in our world. And cynicism will
This is
no
the
longer...
politics of changing presidents.
Well, not simply changing presidents. I think the whole world is on the verge of a lot of change, and honest discourse, which has fallen by the wayside, I think is going to return. Or there's certainly a market for it. People need to talk to each other. They can't just win these arguments or lose these arguments and us get anywhere as a society. There's people on every side of the political spectrum are saying, when you ask them about the future and what we should do, they're saying, I'm not sure. I don't know. Let's talk about it. And that's what this film is here to encourage.
I frequently ask people around this table, what do we need to rethink? You know, and this collision and this crisis has presented that in lots of different ways. Do rethink education, you know, rethink a whole sense of choice and indulgence and lots of other things.
Yeah.
Think holistically.
Yeah, well, yeah, just let me...
Clifford Odets said life isn't printed on dollar bills. And he wrote that during the Depression. And there's a reason for that. You know, the sort of non-materialistic values of life have been drowned in the cacophony of financial madness. And I think it's unfortunate. Economists hate deflation, but when something gets pumped up past the point of reason, it has to deflate. And we have to find ourselves again as human beings.
And we have to listen to our mothers. Our mothers said, don't have a big credit card bill. I mean, everybody who has parents who lived through the Depression said, don't get a big credit bill, you know.
Right, my parents didn't have credit cards. They didn't have a checking account.
And you know who has the biggest credit card? Who? America.
Yeah,
You know?
I know.
We have gone from being this credit country to the largest debtor country, and China owns more of America's debt than anybody now. If this play, and all of its interesting facets, was presented to President-elect Obama, what would you want him to get out of it?
Well, I think that it's good to look back. It's good to look back at eras when things changed. And certainly, I think they are looking back at Depression-era economics and stuff like that right now. And certainly, I think he also has been interested in Abraham Lincoln and FDR. But I think it's also good to look back at the early 60s, because I think that was a major, major change in the culture. And a lot of the stuff that Sister Aloysius is fighting to hold on to, the educational philosophy that she's hiding, and her view of the ballpoint pen as being not a good thing, may seem ludicrous at first, and that she sort of handled it as if it was a missile pointed at everything she believes in. But in fact, she is trying to hold on to some very good values and good things that have been lost in the Cultural Revolution that was the 60s, the classics departments. A lot of things went by the wayside. And that some of those values, I think, need to be looked at again.
Roll tape. Yeah, I just want to see one scene from the film, and we'll come back. Here it is.
Well, thank you, Father, for making time for us. We are at our wits' end.
Well, I think it's an excellent idea to rethink the Christmas pageant. Last year's effort was a little woebegone.
Oh, I loved it. But I love all pageants. The hymns. Oh, little town of Bethlehem. O come, Emmanuel. O come,
All right.
faithful.
Thank you, Sister Jane. So what do you think, Father? Is there something new we could do?
Oh, we all love the Christmas hymns, but it might be jolly to include a secular song.
Secular?
Yes, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, something like that.
What would be the point of a secular song?
That's fun.
Frosty the Snowman.
That's a good one. We could have one of the boys dress up as a snowman, dance around.
Which boy?
We do tryouts.
Frosty the Snowman espouses a pagan belief in magic. Snowman comes to life when An enchanted hat is put on his head. If the music were more somber, people would realize the images are disturbing and the song are radical.
I never thought about Frosty the Snowman like that.
Should be banned from the airwaves.
So, not Frosty the Snowman.
Oh. Beginning to look like a lot like Christmas. It'd be fine, I suppose. Parents would like it. May I ask what you're writing down with that ballpoint pen?
Oh, nothing. It's an idea for a sermon.
You had one right now?
I get them all the time.
Unfortunate.
I forget them, so I have to write them down.
What is the idea?
Intolerance.
Intolerance, that's an idea you recognize?
Moi?
What?
Yes, I do recognize
I mean,
it
your character.
in others.
Never actually experienced it myself.
Yes. Roll tape.
My boy came to your school because they were going to kill him in a public school. His father don't like him. You come to your school, kids don't like him. One man is good to him, this priest. Then does a man have his reasons? Yes. Everybody does. You have your reasons, but do I ask the man why he's good to my son? No. I don't care why. My son needs some man to care about him and to see him through the way he wants to go. And thank God this educated man with some kindness in him wants to do just that.
This will not do.
It's just till June.
I'll throw your son out of this school.
Why would you do that if it didn't start with him?
Because I will stop this.
Did you make the film that you intended to make?
I did indeed. But, you know, it's a pure situation. I brought in 4 incredibly gifted people to collaborate with me, and for the 5 of us, together with Roger Deakins, the cameraman, tell this story.
And for those who saw the play and wonder how the movie could be different, what would you tell them?
I think you see now the story in a larger context of what the community was like that fed this situation. And you get to see what the clergy, how they lived in private, and the differences in the way that the men and women of the clergy were treated. And you get to see the children and them struggle over the children and the boy in question in particular. And I think that adds an enormous emotional power to it and stakes for the actors to play.
And you want all of us who see it and all of us who participated in it, and whether it's doing this or writing the play or acting in the play or going to the play and now watching the movie, to come away with some sense that doubt, that there's danger in believing, in confirmation and believing you're always right, or coming to some place that makes you think you have to say that.
I want the audience to walk in, feel comfortable, have their assumptions working and working very well, and confirming, for instance, like what nuns are like or what black mothers are like. And I want their assumptions to be overturned and not be sufficient to carry them through the story, and them to have to go, you know what, I have to rethink this. I have to look at this person with new eyes. And maybe have it happen so often in the course of this story that by the time they walk out of the theater, they start to look at maybe other people that they will talk to after the film with new eyes, and make a little more room to hear what other people are saying rather than fill in so much about who that person is.
I thank all of you. Thank you. Thank you. Great to have you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.
Out in selected theaters Friday, December 12th, goes nationwide on Christmas Day.
Got down my spine.
Did I say that well?
It's seductive. It's seductive.
Nationwide. You be there now, okay? Thank you all.